Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to Lionel and Joyce Dahmer. His father was a chemistry student, later a research chemist, while his mother, Joyce, struggled with mental health issues, including depression and anxiety. From the start, Jeffrey's life was framed by tension and volatility. His parents' marriage was marked by bitter arguments, loud fights, and a general atmosphere of emotional instability. As a young child, Jeffrey seemed unremarkable. He was blonde-haired, wide-eyed, and quiet. Teachers described him as polite, though painfully shy. However, subtle warning signs began to emerge. At an early age, Dahmer displayed an unusual fascination with dead animals. While other children played with toys or sports equipment, Jeffrey roamed the woods near his home, collecting roadkill and animal bones. He would dissect carcasses, storing body parts in jars and preserving skeletons in acid, an interest his chemist father initially encouraged as scientific curiosity, unaware of the dark impulses behind it. By adolescence, Dahmer had grown into a deeply isolated teenager. He struggled socially, unable to connect meaningfully with peers. He developed a persona of awkward clowning around classmates, mimicking cerebral palsy or blurting out inappropriate comments, a desperate attempt to gain attention and mask his inner turmoil. Meanwhile, his parents' marriage deteriorated further. Loud arguments, separations, and eventual divorce in 1978 left Jeffrey feeling abandoned and increasingly invisible. But while Dahmer appeared aimless on the outside, his inner world was brewing with fantasies of control and domination. Around puberty, he realized he was gay, though he kept his sexuality hidden from everyone. His sexual fantasies became entwined with violence. He imagined rendering men unconscious and having complete control over their bodies, fantasies that blurred the line between sex and death. In 1978, the same year his parents finalized their divorce, Jeffrey committed his first murder. He was just 18 years old. On June 18, he picked up Stephen Hicks, a 19-year-old hitchhiker, and invited him back to his house for drinks. After hours of drinking and listening to music, Hicks attempted to leave. Fearful of rejection and desperate for Hicks to stay, Dahmer struck him from behind with a dumbbell and strangled him. Panicked, he dismembered the body, crushed the bones with a sledgehammer, and scattered the remains in garbage bags. Hicks vanished without a trace. After the murder, Dahmer tried to regain some semblance of normalcy. At his father's urging, he enrolled at Ohio State University but dropped out after one semester due to poor grades and chronic alcohol abuse. He then enlisted in the U.S. Army in 1979, training as a medic. Stationed in Germany, Dahmer continued to drink heavily, and rumors later surfaced that he assaulted fellow soldiers, though no charges were ever filed. In 1981, the Army discharged him for alcohol-related issues. Returning to civilian life, Dahmer bounced between relatives' homes, living first with his grandmother in West Allis, Wisconsin. She offered him a stable environment and hoped her influence might reform him. For a time, it appeared to work. Dahmer held various jobs, attended church, and seemed to behave himself. But beneath the surface, his urges were intensifying. In 1986, police arrested Dahmer for lewd and lascivious behavior after he exposed himself to a group of women and children at a state fair park. He received probation and counseling but avoided jail time. Despite these interventions, Dahmer's private world grew darker. In September 1987, Dahmer's murderous impulses resurfaced. He checked into the Ambassador Hotel in Milwaukee with Stephen Tuomi, a 25-year-old man he'd met at a bar. Dahmer claimed he intended only to drug and fondle Tuomi. However, the next morning, he woke to find Tuomi dead beside him, his chest crushed and blood seeping from his mouth. Later, Dahmer confessed that he had no memory of the killing. In a haze of panic and obsession, Dahmer purchased a suitcase, transported Tuomi's body to his grandmother's house, and dismembered it in the basement. He disposed of the remains in the trash and kept some bones as trophies. Over the next 2 years, Dahmer's methods became chillingly methodical. He targeted young men, often marginalized individuals, including gay men of color and immigrants, whom he met at gay bars, bus stops, or shopping malls. His approach was gentle and disarming. He offered money for photographs, drinks, or simply companionship. Once inside his apartment, Dahmer drugged his victims, strangled them, and performed grotesque rituals. He posed the corpses in sexual positions, photographed them, and often dismembered the bodies. Dahmer began preserving skulls, hearts, and biceps, sometimes even eating parts of the victim's flesh. He dissolved other remains in acid, discarding the sludge down the drain. His apartment filled with skulls, bones, and preserved organs, grim trophies of his secret world. In 1988, after a man escaped from Dahmer's apartment and reported him to police, Dahmer was arrested for sexual assault and enticing a minor. The victim was a 13-year-old Laotian boy named Somsak Sinthasampone. Despite the serious nature of the charges, Dahmer was sentenced to only 1 year in a work release program, followed by probation. During his confinement, he was allowed to leave daily for work. He resumed killing within months of his release. Between 1989 and 1991, Dahmer entered his most prolific and horrifying period. He developed new techniques for control. By 1991, neighbors began to complain about foul odors and strange noises coming from Dahmer's apartment at the Oxford Apartments on North 25th Street in Milwaukee. He blamed spoiled meat or a broken refrigerator. Despite repeated calls, police never investigated thoroughly enough to discover what was happening behind his locked door. On May 27, 1991, Dahmer's crimes came perilously close to discovery. Konarak Sinthasampone, the 14-year-old brother of Dahmer's previous victim Somsak, escaped from Dahmer's apartment. 2 young women found him wandering the street and called police. When officers arrived, Dahmer appeared calm and convincing. He told them Konarak was his 19-year-old lover, drunk after a lover's quarrel. Police accepted Dahmer's explanation and escorted the boy back into his apartment, where he was murdered within hours. The officers never checked Dahmer's apartment, missing the chance to save lives and exposing a devastating failure in law enforcement. Dahmer's murders continued, growing increasingly frenzied. He sometimes preserved entire torsos in his refrigerator and collected human heads in his freezer. He took Polaroids of his victims in various stages of dismemberment, creating a macabre catalog of his atrocities. Finally, on July 22, 1991, Dahmer's killing spree ended. That night, he met 32-year-old Tracy Edwards and invited him back to his apartment with promises of money and beer. Once inside, Dahmer attempted to handcuff Edwards and threatened him with a knife. But Edwards fought back and managed to flee. Running through the streets with one handcuff dangling from his wrist, he flagged down Milwaukee police officers. Edwards led police back to Dahmer's apartment. Officers stepped inside and were immediately struck by the smell of decomposition. They opened a refrigerator and found a severed human head. Searching the apartment further, they discovered 4 other heads, 7 skulls, 2 hearts, an entire human torso, and countless Polaroid photographs documenting the murders. The scene was beyond anything law enforcement had ever encountered. News of the discovery stunned the world. Reporters dubbed Dahmer the Milwaukee Cannibal and the Milwaukee Monster. The details were almost too horrifying to comprehend. Acts of necrophilia, cannibalism, and experiments aimed at creating living sex slaves. During interrogations, Dahmer spoke in a calm, detached manner, offering matter-of-fact confessions. He admitted to murdering 17 young men between 1978 and 1991. He described his fantasies, his experiments, and the compulsion that drove him to kill. He said he didn't want his victims to leave him, and the only way to keep them was to turn them into objects. Dahmer's trial began on January 30, 1992. It was a media circus, drawing huge crowds and endless speculation about whether he was sane. His defense team entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, arguing that only mental illness could explain his horrific acts. Prosecutors contended that Dahmer understood his actions were wrong, as evidenced by his attempts to conceal evidence and avoid capture. In court, Dahmer often sat quietly, sometimes appearing remorseful. His father, Lionel Dahmer, attended the proceedings, struggling to reconcile the monster described in testimony with the son he had raised. On February 15, 1992, the jury found Dahmer legally sane and guilty on 15 counts of murder. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms, totaling 957 years in prison. Later, he would receive a 16th life sentence for another victim. In prison, Dahmer became an unlikely figure of public fascination. He initially spent time in solitary confinement for his own protection, but was later integrated into the general prison population. He reportedly found religion, studying the Bible and getting baptized in May 1994. Some suggested he sought forgiveness. Others believed he remained manipulative to the end. On the morning of November 28, 1994, Dahmer was assigned to work detail at Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. He and two other inmates, Jesse Anderson and Christopher Scarver, were cleaning a bathroom when Scarver attacked both men with a metal bar from a weight machine. Dahmer suffered severe head trauma and was pronounced dead an hour later at the hospital. He was 34 years old. Scarver later claimed God had told him to kill Dahmer, whom he saw as evil incarnate. The news of Dahmer's death evoked a complex reaction. Many felt relief, believing justice had finally arrived. Others wondered if his death denied the world further insights into his monstrous mind. His parents expressed sorrow over his murder, grappling with grief and shame that would linger for the rest of their lives. In the years since Dahmer's capture and death, he has become an enduring figure in true crime lore. His story has been dissected in countless documentaries, books, and films. Criminologists analyze his pathology, trying to understand how a seemingly mild-mannered man could commit such extraordinary atrocities. Dahmer's case challenges society's notions of evil, mental illness, and the capacity for monstrous acts to hide behind a mask of normalcy. Jeffrey Dahmer remains one of America's most infamous serial killers, but beyond the gore lies a story about loneliness, obsession, and a profound inability to connect with humanity. Dahmer's legacy is a stark reminder that true evil can appear quiet, polite, and disturbingly ordinary, a monster lurking behind the eyes of the boy next door.